built on a couple of very simple principles: open technologies, good ideas, and ecosystem. Open technology is the foundation of any cloud. Without it, you're building a dead-end cloud, whether you look at the infrastructure, the platform, or how you interact. We, the industry, the community, all of you, have been on this journey over the past 4 or so years to build out an open cloud architecture. And here we are now in this IT renaissance. If you look at what's happened across the infrastructure layer, the platform layer, and how you build the applications, how you interact, you can scale out the art of the possible. If it weren't open, we wouldn't be here today with all these great innovations. And it is now more important than ever that open governance and open technologies embrace the speed at which the industry is moving and the speed at which they have to move in the open. And they're doing that today.
So good afternoon. I want to talk a little bit about enterprise transformation choices, paying somewhat more emphasis on open standards. And then we'll have a panel discussion with a very distinguished set of panelists. So before I start the presentation, I just want to give a backdrop. And that might be sort of a motivation, because I sort of see the same thing playing all over again. So if you go back about 10 years, at that time everybody wanted to automate their IT, right? Do basic automation. And obviously, the first thing everybody did was, start scripting. Writing scripts in Ruby, whatever, your favorite thing is. And, you would have these, umpteen scripts, each of which did something or the other. Right? The difficulty that it ran into was, while it worked for the first few, months, whatever the time period was, the difficulty it ran into was it was very hard to change anything, because you never knew which script was doing what and all those type of things. And, whenever something changed in the IT equipment, so for example, the scripts might refer to some IP address, and let's say that you had some other IP address, then everything started falling apart. Right? So to some extent, maybe it is lesser, than what it was before, but to some extent, this is the same thing, but being played at a much higher level of sophistication. Right? So with that, let me start with the presentation. I'll try to be brief. I don't know if lunch has happened or is going to happen, but either way, it's going to happen, so it's even worse than has happened. Okay. So obviously, enterprises want to transform. Right? And there are several reasons for it. The reasons might be, you want to pay as you go rather than having upfront investments. So you want to sort of shift your capex into your opex. The reason might be that you want to transform from being more of a batch processing type of a setup to more of a real-time type of a setup. Right? So I'll give you a very simple example, and while it is simple, you'll appreciate the complexities that it causes on the IT side. So let's take a telecom company, for example, and let's say that, what happens very frequently nowadays, you're talking on the phone and the phone drops, the connection drops, right? Now, in a batch setup, obviously the realization that the connection has dropped comes much later on the IT side. Right? In a real-time setup, you know that the call has dropped now. And if you were trying to do campaign in the batch setup, you might send something, the next day or whenever it is. In a real-time setup, as soon as the call drops, maybe you can send an SMS or a message saying that, sorry, your call dropped and, whatever you want to offer, etc. Now, that changes a lot of things on the IT side. So sure, I mean, this particular example, you can realize using many things, right? You could somehow create a siloed application that senses things from the network and, sends an offer or do something. But if you want your overall IT infrastructure to move from this batch processing to this, real-time or near real-time type of processing, then it implies a lot of transformation. You might want greater agility. So I don't know the exact numbers, but I've seen numbers which vary, plus or minus. I've seen numbers, for example, that say that 80% of the IT budget is spent on maintaining the IT that is already there, right? And only 20% is, to do new stuff or innovation or whatever. And maybe you would like to transform so that you shift it and you only spend 50% of your IT budget maintaining what's already on the floor, and the rest 50 you do new things or, things like that. Maybe you want to transform because you want deeper insight. You want to, rather than just, using the data that is being generated in your enterprise, maybe you want to look at data being generated by your customers when they're doing things outside of your enterprise, right? So, for example, if you're a bank, you might want to correlate it with what's happening on Twitter or something else, right? So there are various reasons to transform, and obviously, another reason could be, you want, for various reasons, lot of the workloads that happen in IT environments have fairly peaky type of behavior, fairly impulsive type of behavior, for whatever reason. Maybe the business is open during certain hours, maybe there are special days. For example, I was using the telco example. So everybody sends, Happy New Year or Happy Diwali or whatever on special days, and obviously the load on those days is much higher than the load on some other days, right? And maybe you just want an infrastructure that can elastically scale, and that's the reason you would like to transform. Various reasons you might want to transform. And as I said, we obviously have been here before. We have been wanting to transform. The sort of scripting example I gave you was a really rudimentary example, but there have been various years or eras in which we have transformed from doing things one way to doing things in a somewhat better way. So the interesting thing is that a lot of what we discussed, a lot of this transformation, cloud can enable a lot of these transformations to happen. Right? Obviously, cloud is not a panacea like any other thing, and in order for things to happen, a lot of other things also have to happen, right? Including culture adjustment in the enterprise to this new model. But nonetheless, cloud, because of various factors, including elasticity, etc., capacity on demand, and including other abstractions that you can build, it is somewhat uniquely positioned as an IT technology to help a lot of these transformations to occur. Okay? And obviously, there are different formats or different incarnations in which cloud comes. In the interest of time, I'll try to be brief because there is one place where I really want to spend a lot of time. It could be infrastructure as a service, basically just providing virtual machines. Could be platform as a service, could be software as a service, could be different incarnations. And And in your particular enterprise, the incarnation or the combination of incarnations that makes sense, that is unique to each organization. For example, while there might be cost efficiencies of a public cloud, maybe in your particular case, there is some data that has regulatory restrictions around it. So there is only certain things that you can do by placing it outside the enterprise. Maybe in that setup, a better combination is a hybrid cloud, right? Where the more sensitive data stays within the enterprise and the less sensitive data can reside on a more public cloud. So there are different combinations and it all depends on, on the specific scenario. But nonetheless, so the only point is that there are multiple cloud models. So there is all this complexity, there are all these cloud models, and therefore it becomes even more imperative that the transformation journey you start on, whether, and it's not a starting point and a finish point, it's almost a continuum. Wherever you are in that continuum, but it's even more imperative that that we pay attention to certain standards, okay, and that's the whole. So I'll skip a couple of foils because I've made some of these comments while. So there are obviously at a top level, there are obviously a lot of components, I would call them, for lack of a better word, but a lot of components that are already there. I mean, I've listed out some examples, so maybe I'll go through some of them. But these components, they enable interoperability, flexibility, portability, etc., because they are built with that open standard in their consciousness. Okay? To give you an example, let's take open power. So you might know that Power Systems, the IBM hardware platform, there is a consortium now called Open Power. And what Open Power does is it allows you to customize, it allows you to use that architecture, use that firmware, but it allows you to customize it depending on your particular workload, right? So so the level of sophistication is quite high here, because now you're saying that you're going to adapt the stack starting from the hardware all the way to processes or what have you. You're going to start adapting it so that you have the most efficiencies in the particular setup that you want to apply it to. And therefore, it is even more important that things are interoperable, etc., etc. SDN, software-defined networks, this is another interesting one, where you try to separate out this control plane from the data plane. So instead of looking at appliances of some sort, you start looking at network functionality as as functionality delivered through virtual machines. And then you have far more flexibility, because rather than building highly restrictive vertical environments, because these are VMs, you could provision, deprovision, do various types of things on the fly. You could even do more sophisticated things. For example, if you have data paths that are more latency sensitive, right? So as an example, let's say you're doing a gaming application. In a gaming application, data paths are highly sensitive. Once you start doing SDN type of things, or its next incarnation, this network NFV, network function virtualization type of things, you can start placing these VMs so that the VMs, some of them are closer to certain network elements, some of them are further apart depending on what latency tolerances, etc. they have. And similarly, MongoDB, which is basically a NoSQL, not only SQL database, and so on and so forth. So there are various components that allow for this. Also want to touch upon are three, and these are just some more components. But what I want to touch upon are beyond the component level, there are bigger things at an architecture level that are as important. Okay, and these three things that I want to touch upon. The first one is OSLC, which is Open Services for Lifecycle Collaboration. In the interest of time, I'll just focus on one part, which is OSLC is based on W3C linked data. So what does it mean? What it means is that I can have a component and I can have data associated with that component, which tells me that for that component to be deployed, what are its requirements? Which tells me that for that component to be tested, right, what is required or who can test that component, and so on and so forth. So once you start getting to that level of, so this is again an open standard, right? Because once you define it, others can read it, and now you can start composing things so that they start working together without a lot of interference from outside. Right? So this is almost a repeat of what happened earlier. We're starting to put in, or these open standards, they thankfully allow enough information, or they try to define the specification of the information in a way that allows, something else which adheres to that to understand and therefore start using it to try and build more, more functional things. OpenStack, which I'll not go into as much, but this is again a cloud management platform, again built on various standards. A cloud OS, if you prefer to call it that. Tosca is another interesting standard. So think that when the couple of things. One is you'd like some way of specifying the structure of an application. You'd also like some way of specifying the topology of things. You'd also like some way of specifying what is the orchestration that is happening between all these components that are there. So you need some specification for the components, how they are connected, the topology of it, and what is the orchestration that is going on. And what Tosca allows you to do, it's a standard that allows you to do precisely that. What is the advantage? The advantage is obviously once you have this information for your billing system, for your CRM, for whatever your system might be, I can move from one cloud provider to another cloud provider without doing anything. Right? In fact, in Eurocloud, this was demonstrated in the context of, I think it was CRM, but I may be mistaken, but it was demonstrated in which a fairly complex thing was moved from one provider to another provider simply because, enough specifications were built into it. So let me pause here and get into the panel discussion. The bottom line message is that these standards they pay more than pay for themselves in the long run, and that long is not very long. They more than pay for themselves in fairly quickly. Right? So as you start on your cloud journey, or as you continue on your cloud journey, this might be something that you pay more attention to. So let me just pause here.
All right, thank you. All right, let's give him a round of applause.